A woman's silence is the equivalent of a man's tear. Let me ask you something. Think about the last time you saw a man cry. Not a little watery eye, not a quiet sniffle, actually cry. What happened in the room? People went quiet. Someone moved closer. Someone asked, "Are you okay?" People checked on him afterward. They talked about it later. Did you see him? He actually cried. Something must be seriously wrong. I've never seen him like that. Now think about the last time you saw a woman cry. What happened? Someone shifted uncomfortably in their seat. Someone rolled their eyes. Someone whispered, "Here we go again." Maybe someone handed her a tissue and waited for it to be over. Same emotion, same tears, same pain, completely different response. And if you've ever noticed that, if you've ever felt something was off about that difference, you were right, because today we're talking about something that nobody really sits down and breaks open honestly. We're talking about why a man's tear seems to carry more weight than a woman's pain, why emotional expression is valued differently depending on who's expressing it, and what the real equivalent of a man's tear actually is for a woman. And I'll tell you right now, it's not more tears. Stay with me. Because by the end of this, you're going to see something that you can't unsee. The moment everything becomes clear, I want to tell you about two people. Let's call them Mark and Sarah. They work at the same company, same level, same team, same pressure. One day the company loses a major client. The team has been working on this project for 8 months. 8 months of late nights and weekends and sacrificed personal time. And in the meeting where they get the news, Mark, composed, quiet, always has it together Mark. His voice cracks just slightly, his jaw tightens, his eyes get glossy, he doesn't even fully cry. It's just a moment, a crack in the wall, and the entire room responds. People lean forward, the manager puts a hand on his shoulder. After the meeting, 3 colleagues check on him separately. "Hey man, you okay? That hit you hard, I could tell. Come grab a coffee with me." People talk about it for days. Mark really cared about that project. You can tell how much he put into it. That meant a lot to him. Now Sarah in the same meeting gets emotional. Her eyes fill with tears. She blinks them back, but a couple escape. She's visibly upset. Someone shifts in their chair. One colleague looks at the ceiling. The manager moves on from the topic quickly. After the meeting, nobody checks on Sarah. Nobody says, "Hey, you okay?" Nobody mentions it. What people do say is different. Sarah got emotional in there. She needs to learn to separate feelings from work. Is she going to be okay leading projects if she reacts like that? Same loss, same 8 months of work, same tears, same pain, completely different story. And this isn't something I made up to make a point. This is Tuesday in most workplaces. This is Sunday dinner in most family. This is every day in most relationships. And once you see it everywhere. Why this happens, the simple truth. So why does this happen? Why does one person's tears command a room and another person's tears get dismissed? The honest answer is simple. Scarcity, not value, not significance, not pain level, just scarcity. We are all wired to pay attention to things that are rare. It's just how human beings work. When something is uncommon, we notice it. When something is everywhere, we tune it out. And here's the thing about men and emotional expression. From the time they're little boys, men are told in 1,000 different ways that showing emotion is not okay. Stop crying. Man up. Don't be soft. Toughen up. Boys don't cry. Stop being sensitive. You're acting like a girl. Pull yourself together. They hear this from parents, from teachers, from coaches, from other boys, from movies and TV shows and music, over and over and over again. By the time a man is an adult, he has 20, 30, 40 years of emotional suppression built into his nervous system. Feeling something and showing nothing has become automatic. It's not even a choice anymore. It's just how he operates. So when something finally breaks through all of that, when a tear actually escapes after 40 years of being told not to let it, people respond to the rarity of it. They're not actually seeing the emotion. They're seeing that something broke through an enormous wall, and that's striking. That gets attention. It's like watching a dam crack. The crack itself might be small, but what it represents is enormous. You know the water is behind that crack, you know what's coming, and you pay attention. Now here's where it gets unfair. Women are given something that looks like a privilege but actually isn't. They're given permission to be emotional. Society says it's okay for women to cry. It's expected. It's normal, but that permission comes with a hidden cost, because the moment something becomes expected, it loses its power. The moment something is normal, people stop paying attention to it. Women aren't seen as breaking through a wall when they cry. They're seen as doing what women do, and that's where the dismissal begins. The very freedom to express emotion becomes the reason that expression is devalued. The very permission granted to women becomes the source of their dismissal. And that is not a privilege. That is one of the most subtle and painful forms of not being seen that exists. Where IT starts, the childhood programming. This doesn't begin in adulthood. It begins the moment children are born, and most parents genuinely don't realize they're doing it. Studies on parent-child interaction have found something that's hard to sit with. Parents respond more quickly to boys' expressions of physical pain. They respond more quickly to girls' expressions of emotional distress, but they also dismiss girls' emotional expressions more quickly. Let me put that in plain language. When a little boy falls and scrapes his knee, parents rush to help. When a little girl cries about something emotional, parents initially respond, but then they move on faster. They comfort briefly and then redirect. Okay, you're fine. Come on, let's go do something else. With boys, it's slightly different. Their physical pain is taken seriously, but their emotional pain gets dismissed earlier. Stop crying, you're okay. It's not that bad. Shake it off. So from the very beginning, two very different lessons are being taught. Little boys learn my emotions are not acceptable, but if something is serious enough to break through my control, people will notice. Little girls learn my emotions are acceptable, but they don't really change anything. Both of these lessons are damaging, deeply damaging, just in different ways. The boy grows up unable to access his own emotional world. He buries it, he suppresses it, he builds a wall so thick that even he can't always feel what's on the other side. The girl grows up with full access to her emotional world, but in a world that treats that access like background noise. She feels deeply, she expresses openly, she reaches out consistently. And people around her say, there she goes again. Think about what that does to a person over time. Think about what it does to someone's sense of self when they express pain and the response they consistently get is either dismissal or eye rolls or people waiting for it to be over. They start to question themselves. Am I too sensitive? Am I overreacting? Is my pain not that serious? Should I just stop talking about this? And eventually, many of them do stop. Not because the pain went away, but because they learned that expressing it doesn't help. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't make people respond. It just makes them uncomfortable. And so the emotional expression goes underground, which brings us to the real equivalent of a man's tear, the equivalent, a woman's silence. I said at the beginning that the equivalent of a man's tear for a woman is not more tears, it's her silence. And I want to explain exactly what I mean by that. An empath woman, a woman who is naturally expressive, naturally communicative, naturally emotionally present. Communicates, she processes out loud, she shares what she's feeling, she tries to explain what's happening inside her, she asks to be understood, she reaches out. This is just how she's wired. It's not weakness, it's not being too much. It's her natural way of connecting with the world and the people in it. So when that woman goes quiet, when she stops explaining, when she stops reaching out, when she stops asking to be understood, that silence is not calm. That silence contains everything she stopped saying. Every feeling she decided wasn't worth expressing, every explanation she gave up on, every need she stopped asking to be met, every time she tried to communicate and got dismissed, every moment she reached out and got nothing back, all of it is in that silence. Her silence isn't emptiness, it's overflow, it's pain that has exceeded what words can hold. It's the same thing as a man's tear, it's the breaking point of something that's been building for a very long time. But here's the difference between her silence and his tear. When he cries, everyone notices. Everyone asks what's wrong. Everyone leans in. When she goes quiet, everyone breathes a sigh of relief. Finally, she's calmed down. She's stopped being so emotional. Things are better now. They have completely misread the signal. Her silence isn't calm. Her silence isn't acceptance. Her silence isn't things getting better. Her silence is the moment she decided that being understood is no longer possible. The moment she stopped believing that expressing her pain will lead to anything changing. Her silence is the most serious thing she can communicate. And the tragedy is that it's almost always misunderstood as peace, the other equivalents nobody talks about. The silence is the biggest one, but it's not the only equivalent that goes unrecognized. There are several moments in a woman's emotional life that are just as significant as a man's tear, and just as consistently missed. When she stops arguing, think about this one. Women are often accused of arguing too much, of being too emotional, of never letting things go, of always bringing things up, of holding grudges and coming back to the same issues over and over. So when she finally stops, when she stops bringing things up, when she stops fighting to be heard, everyone around her celebrates. She's finally being reasonable. She's more mature now. Things are so much better. She stopped making everything into an argument. But here's what actually happened. She didn't stop because she agreed. She didn't stop because the issue was resolved. She didn't stop because she feels heard and understood. She stopped because she ran out of reasons to believe that fighting would make any difference. She argued because she cared. She brought things up because she believed change was possible. She came back to the same issues because they were never actually resolved, just avoided. And when she finally stops doing all of that, it's not because she's better, it's because something broke. She gave up on the relationship having the capacity to change. She gave up on the other person having the ability to hear her. She gave up on her own voice mattering in that space, and that is not peace, that is surrender. When she stops asking for things, a woman who stops asking for what she needs isn't a woman who no longer needs things. She's a woman who learned that asking doesn't work. Maybe she used to ask to be heard, to be checked on, to be prioritized sometimes, to have her feelings acknowledged, to have her needs considered, and every time she asked, something happened. Maybe she was told she was too needy. Maybe she was made to feel like she was asking for too much. Maybe she was dismissed. Maybe she was met with defensiveness or irritation, and she adapted to that feedback, not by having fewer needs, but by learning to keep her needs quiet. So she stopped asking, and everyone around her interprets this as her finally being low maintenance, as her being easier to be around, as things getting better. But what's actually happening is slow and painful. She's disappearing, piece by piece, need by need, request by request. She's learning that who she is doesn't fit into the space she's been given, and rather than keep trying to fit, she's starting to shrink when she says, "I'm fine, I'm fine." Two words that contain more than most conversations. When a woman who has been openly expressing pain, who has been trying to communicate, who has been reaching out and asking to be heard, suddenly says, "I'm fine," that is not fine. "I'm fine" is the moment she stopped trying to explain, the moment she decided that whatever she was feeling was not worth the energy of trying to make someone else understand it. "I'm fine" is the door closing. And most people hear "I'm fine" and feel relieved. Okay, good, drama over, we can move on. But what just happened is significant. She just took something real and buried it, not because it resolved, but because she gave up on resolution. And every "I'm fine" that replaces something real takes her a little further away from the relationship and a little further away from herself. When she stops crying, here's the one that people find most surprising. Women are dismissed for crying. She's always crying. She's so emotional. She cries about everything. So naturally, when she stops crying, people think she's better. But in clinical psychology, when someone who has been visibly distressed suddenly becomes emotionally flat, that's not considered a good sign. That's considered a warning sign. The tears were a connection to the pain. They were evidence that she was still processing, still feeling, still connected to her own experience. When the tears stop and what's left is flatness, something has shifted, not toward healing, toward numbness. She's not better, she's not over it, she's not more mature, she's disconnected from the pain, from the relationship, from you. And once that disconnection happens, getting back is not as simple as people think. The language that reveals everything. You want to understand how deep this goes. Pay attention to the language we use. When a man shows emotion, listen to how people talk about it. He broke down. He finally let it out. He showed his human side. You could tell it was real. He's always so composed, so when he got emotional, you knew it meant something. Even he cried. That last one, even he cried. Think about what that phrase contains. It implies that his tears are so rare and so unexpected that witnessing them is remarkable. It implies that his emotional expression is an event, something worth noting, something that means more because of who it came from. Now listen to how people talk about women's emotional expression. She got emotional. She was upset again. She overreacted. She was being dramatic. She always does this. She was crying again. Again. That one word carries so much dismissal. Again means this is a pattern. Again means this is expected. Again means this isn't worth taking seriously because it keeps happening. But nobody says a man broke down again when he gets emotional twice. Nobody says there he goes again when he expresses frustration. His emotional expression doesn't get counted and cataloged and used against him. Hers does, and this language shapes how people respond. It shapes how women see themselves. It shapes how women start to pre-filter their own emotional expression. Because when you know your pain is going to be met with again, you start to think twice before expressing it. You start to edit yourself. You start to decide that some things aren't worth mentioning because they'll just be dismissed anyway. And the editing becomes a habit, and the habit becomes a wall, and the wall becomes so familiar that you forget there was ever a time when you didn't have it. What Carl Jung actually said about this. Now let's bring in some real psychology here. Because this isn't just a social observation. There's deep psychological theory behind why this happens and what it costs people. Carl Jung spent his entire career studying the human psyche, and while he wasn't specifically talking about gender double standards, his framework explains exactly what's happening here. The persona. Jung had a concept he called the persona. It's the mask we wear for the world, the face we present in public, the role we play. Men are given a specific persona by society: strong, composed, in control, unemotional. This persona is the mask that excludes feeling. Men are expected to wear it all the time, in relationships, at work, with friends, with family. And when something breaks through that mask, when a tear escapes despite the persona, it's jarring. It violates the image. It shows that beneath the composed exterior is a real human being with real pain. And people respond to that violation because it's unexpected, because it breaks the persona so completely. Women are given a different persona: sensitive, emotional, nurturing, feeling. Their persona includes emotional expression, so when they express emotion, it fits perfectly within the mask they've been given. Nobody is surprised, nobody is moved, nobody pays special attention, because it fits, and things that fit don't draw our attention. But here's what Jung would add that's really important. The persona is never the whole person. It's always just the surface. And everyone, regardless of the mask they're given, has a whole inner world beneath it that deserves to be seen. The man's composure isn't strength. It's a mask that eventually cracks, and when it cracks hard because so much has been compressed behind it. The woman's emotional expression isn't weakness. It's a real person communicating real pain. And when that expression gets consistently dismissed, the real person starts to hide. Both are forms of loss. Both are forms of not being fully seen. The shadow. Jung talked about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we push down and refuse to acknowledge. Society has placed emotional expression in men's shadow. They're not supposed to feel, or at least not supposed to show it, so the feeling gets suppressed, pushed down, hidden. But what you push into the shadow doesn't disappear. It stays there, it builds, and eventually it comes out in ways you can't always control. For men, this often looks like anger that seems disproportionate to the situation, or complete emotional shutdown, or tears that come out of nowhere about something that seems minor but is actually connected to everything that was never expressed. For women, the shadow dynamic is different but equally damaging. Society allows emotional expression but dismisses it. So the woman expresses and gets nothing back, and eventually she learns to push her OWN feelings into her own shadow. Not because society told her she wasn't allowed to feel, but because she learned that feeling doesn't change anything. She starts telling herself, I shouldn't be this upset. I'm overreacting. I'm too sensitive. I need to just get over this. She internalizes the dismissal. She becomes the one dismissing herself, and that's a particular kind of painful, because now she's not just being dismissed by the world, she's being dismissed by herself, the anima and animus. Jung believed that every man has what he called an anima, a feminine component in his psychology, something that contains feeling, intuition, emotional sensitivity, connection, and every woman has what he called an animus, a masculine component, something that contains assertion, directness, decisiveness. When society tells men they can't cry, it's actually telling them to cut off their anima, to sever their connection to their own emotional world. When society dismisses women's tears, it's telling them their anima is worthless, that the part of them that feels deeply and expresses genuinely has no value. Both are psychological injuries. Both damage the person's capacity to be whole. And both contribute to a world where emotional expression becomes either a performance or a liability, instead of what it actually is, which is just information, just honest communication about what's happening inside a human being. The medical reality that doesn't get talked about enough. I want to step away from the psychology for a moment and talk about something more concrete, because this isn't just about feelings being dismissed. This dismissal has real consequences that affect people's physical health and safety. Research on how medical professionals treat pain is uncomfortable to read. Studies have consistently found that women wait longer in emergency rooms to receive pain medication than men do with the same symptoms. Not slightly longer, significantly longer. Women's heart attack symptoms are more often dismissed or misdiagnosed. Because the classic symptoms of a heart attack were largely defined based on how they present in men, women often experience different symptoms. And when they describe what they're feeling, they're more often told it's anxiety or stress or something that will pass. Women with chronic pain conditions wait years longer on average for a diagnosis. Conditions like endometriosis can take 8 to 10 years to be properly diagnosed. Because women are so consistently told their pain is exaggerated or emotional or stress-related that both patients and doctors start believing it. Women in psychiatric emergencies are more often labeled as dramatic or manipulative than men with the same level of distress. And here's the connection. The dismissal of women's emotional expression isn't separate from these medical realities. They're the same thing. They're the same pattern playing out in different rooms. In the meeting room, her tears are dismissed. In the doctor's office, her pain is dismissed. In the emergency room, her symptoms are dismissed. In her relationship, her feelings are dismissed. Same woman, same dismissal, different setting. The lesson the world keeps teaching her is what you feel is not that serious. What you experience is probably not real. You are probably overreacting. And the tragedy is that some women start to believe it. They stop reporting pain. They stop seeking help. They push through symptoms they shouldn't be pushing through, because they've been dismissed so many times that they start dismissing themselves. And that has consequences that go far beyond hurt feelings. What this does to relationships, let's bring this into something most people can relate to directly. Relationships. Because this double standard doesn't just exist in workplaces and medical offices. It exists in the most intimate spaces people share. Think about what happens in a long-term relationship where this pattern plays out. In the beginning, she communicates. She shares what she's feeling. She brings things up when something is bothering her. She talks about what she needs and what she hopes for and what's hurting her. And if the person she's with consistently dismisses those communications, if they consistently minimize her feelings, if they consistently wait for her to calm down instead of trying to understand what she's saying, something starts to change in her, not immediately, not dramatically. It's so gradual that neither person notices it happening. She starts self-editing. Before she brings something up, she asks herself, is this worth the reaction I'm going to get? Sometimes she decides it is, but sometimes she decides it's not worth the argument, not worth being dismissed, not worth the "you're too sensitive" response, so she doesn't mention it. And that becomes a pattern. More and more things don't get mentioned. More and more feelings get stored instead of expressed. And over time, there are whole landscapes of her inner life that she stopped sharing. Whole rooms in herself that she's locked because she learned that inviting anyone in there doesn't end well. And from the outside, the relationship looks stable. It looks better, even less conflict, less drama, less of her getting emotional. But what's actually happening is she's disappearing from the relationship while still being physically present in it. She's still there. She still makes dinner and shows up and has conversations. But the deepest parts of her are gone, packed away somewhere safe where they won't get dismissed. And this is one of the loneliest experiences a person can have, being in a relationship with someone while being fundamentally unseen by them. Now here's what eventually happens. One day something shifts. Something that might seem small to an outside observer becomes the last thing, the one thing that was finally too much, and she leaves, or she disconnects completely while staying, or she finds somewhere else to put her emotional energy. And the person who was with her is completely blindsided. Where did this come from? Everything was fine. She never said anything was wrong. She seemed okay, but she wasn't okay. She hadn't been okay for a long time. She just stopped saying so, and nobody noticed the silence. The empaths in this story, I want to talk specifically about empaths here because this dynamic hit empath women particularly hard. An empath woman feels everything more intensely than most people. She absorbs the emotions of people around her. She's hyper-aware of the emotional atmosphere in any room she walks into. She feels other people's pain almost as if it were her own. And because she feels so deeply, she also communicates deeply. She's not crying about nothing. She's crying about everything she's absorbed and everything she's feeling and everything she perceives that others don't. Her emotional expression isn't dramatic. It's proportional to a level of emotional experience that most people never reach. But because it looks like a lot to people who don't understand how empaths work, it gets dismissed as too much. You're too sensitive. Not everything is that deep. Why do you feel things so intensely? You need to not take things so personally. And the empath hears this and thinks, maybe they're right, maybe something is wrong with me, maybe I shouldn't feel this much. So she starts trying to shrink herself, to feel less, to express less, to take up less emotional space. But she can't actually feel less. She's just wired to feel deeply. It's neurological. It's not a choice. So instead of feeling less, she starts hiding more. She feels everything and she shows nothing. And that gap between what she's experiencing internally and what she's allowing to be seen externally is exhausting. It takes enormous energy to feel that much and contain it all, to be overwhelmed internally while appearing composed externally. And over time, that energy runs out. When an empath woman finally goes quiet, it's not just the end of expressing herself in that relationship. It's the end of investing in that relationship entirely, because for an empath, expression is connection. When she stops expressing, she stops connecting. And when she stops connecting, she's already gone, even if she's still physically standing in the room. This is what people miss about empath women who go quiet. They think the quiet is peace. They think it's acceptance. They think things have gotten better. What's actually happened is the most emotionally perceptive person in the room has quietly decided that no one in it deserves her perception anymore. And that's a loss that most people don't understand until it's already permanent. The double wound in the cycle it creates here something that I think is really worth sitting with. Both men and women are being harmed by this dynamic, just differently. Men are wounded by not being allowed to feel. Women are wounded by feeling everything and having none of it taken seriously. And these two wounds create a cycle in relationships that keeps both people stuck. The man has learned to suppress emotion, so when his partner tries to communicate emotionally, he doesn't fully know how to engage with it. He gets uncomfortable, he gets defensive, he goes quiet or he minimizes or he says, "Can we not do this right now?" Not because he doesn't care, but because he genuinely doesn't know how to be in emotional conversations. He was never taught. The skill was suppressed before it could develop. The woman sees his discomfort and his deflection and feels dismissed, which confirms what she's been told her whole life: her feelings are too much. Her emotional needs are inconvenient. She's asking for too much. So she either escalates, trying to finally get through, or she retreats, deciding it's not worth it. If she escalates, he shuts down more, which makes her escalate more. and suddenly they're in a pattern that neither of them started but both of them are maintaining. If she retreats, he thinks everything is fine, until one day it's not, until one day she's done, and he doesn't see it coming because he never learned to read the signals. Both of them lose. Both of them are products of a system that taught them to handle emotion in ways that don't actually work. And here's the thing. Neither of them is the villain in this story. He's not suppressing emotion because he's cold or cruel. He's suppressing emotion because he was taught that suppression is strength. She's not withdrawing because she's manipulative or punishing him. She's withdrawing because she ran out of reasons to keep trying. Both of them are doing the best they can with the emotional tools they were given, which weren't very good tools. What needs to actually change, so what do we actually do with this? Because identifying the problem is one thing, but most people watching this want to know what to do about it. For men, the first thing is to understand that your tears don't need to be special events. They don't need to be reserved for moments of extreme pain that break through decades of suppression. You're allowed to feel things regularly. You're allowed to communicate emotionally without it being a crisis. You're allowed to say that hurt me without having to be at breaking point first. But this requires unlearning. It requires sitting with discomfort. It requires being in emotional conversations without escaping or deflecting. And it requires understanding that the woman in your life has been communicating all along. Long before the silence, long before the withdrawal, long before things got serious. She was communicating in small ways that you might have been trained not to notice. And by the time you noticed something was wrong, she'd already been trying to tell you for a long time. For women, the first thing is to understand that your silence is not invisible. Even if the people around you aren't reading it correctly, something has changed in you, and that change mattered. You don't have to keep expressing to people who consistently dismiss you, but you do have to acknowledge what your own silence means. Because sometimes we go quiet and we tell ourselves it's fine, it's not worth it, we're over it. When actually we're not fine, it's not resolved, and we're not over it at all. We're just exhausted. And exhaustion isn't the same as resolution. The silence can protect you from further dismissal, but it can also trap you inside your own pain if you're not careful. Finding spaces, finding people, finding outlets where your expression is actually received. That's not a luxury, that's a necessity. For relationships, the most important shift that can happen in a relationship around this is learning to take silence seriously. When someone who is communicating goes quiet, the question isn't, oh good, things calmed down. The question is, what happened? What changed? What have I been missing? Silence in someone who used to speak is information, important information. Don't let yourself be relieved by it. Be curious about it. Ask, really ask, not are you okay? And then moving on when they say, I'm fine. But I've noticed you've been quieter lately. What's going on? What have I been missing? I want to understand. That one question asked genuinely can sometimes be enough to open a door that was nearly closed forever. The bottom line, let me bring it back to where we started. A man's tear gets the room's attention. A woman's silence gets misread as peace. Both are the same thing. Both are pain that has finally exceeded what can be contained. Both are a breaking point. Both deserve the same response, but they don't get the same response, not even close. And that's not because men's pain is more real. It's not because women's pain is less significant. It's not because tears from one person mean more than tears from another. It's because of a set of social rules that were written a long time ago, and that most people follow without ever questioning them. Rules that say men shouldn't feel, so when they do, it's remarkable. Rules that say women feel too much, so when they do, it's ignored. Both rules are wrong. Both rules cause harm. Both rules need to change. Because the truth is simple. Pain is pain, regardless of who's carrying it. A person reaching their breaking point is someone who needs to be seen. Regardless of whether that breaking point looks like a tear rolling down a man's face or a woman's voice going quiet in a way it never used to, both are saying the same thing. I'm not okay, I need you to see me, I need you to take this seriously. The only question is whether the people around them are paying enough attention to hear it. I hope after watching this, you are. If you made it to the end of this, thank you, genuinely. This is a topic that people feel strongly about, and I'm curious what you think. Have you experienced this? Have you been the person whose silence was misread as peace? Have you been the person who didn't see the signals until it was too late? I'd love to hear your perspective in the comments, because this is a conversation that's bigger than one video, and every perspective matters. If this resonated with you, share it, not just because it helps the channel, but because there might be someone in your life who needs to hear this. Someone whose silence is being misread right now. Someone who needs to know that their pain is not invisible even if it feels that way. And if you're the person who's been going quiet, please know this, your silence is not weakness. Your exhaustion is not failure. Your withdrawal is not drama. It's what happens when a person has been trying for a long time and hasn't been heard, and you deserve to be heard. Subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.